Welcome to the channel Error Coins Hunter. And before you scroll past this video, let me ask you something that might just change your life. What if I told you that a simple nickel, one that looks exactly like the ones you've been throwing into tip jars or leaving in your car's cup holder, could actually be worth $28 million? I'm not talking about some ancient artifact locked away in a museum vault. I'm talking about a 1991 D Jefferson nickel that might be hiding in your pocket right now, waiting to turn an ordinary day into the most extraordinary moment of your entire life. Most people see this coin and think it's just 5 cents, but collectors, auction houses, and wealthy investors see something completely different. They see a fortune. Now, here's the thing. This isn't just about one valuable coin, because after I reveal everything about this 1991 D Jefferson nickel worth up to $28 million, I'm going to show you another nickel from 1970 that has an even more insane story behind it. And then we're going to dive into a 1941 Jefferson nickel that will absolutely blow your mind with its value and rarity. But I'm not going to spoil those just yet, because trust me, you need to hear about this 1991D first. And you need to stick around until the very end, because what I'm about to reveal about those other coins will make you want to run to your coin jar immediately. So let's talk about the 1991 D Jefferson Nickel, minted right there in Denver, Colorado, during a year when most Americans weren't thinking twice about the nickels jingling in their pockets. The Denver Mint produced millions of these coins, sending them out into circulation where they passed through countless hands, funded vending machine snacks, paid parking meters, and sat forgotten in drawers for decades. But here's where the story gets absolutely wild. Among those millions of ordinary 1991D nickels, there are a handful, and I mean a very small handful, that carry errors so rare, so unique, and so sought after that they become the holy grail of coin collecting. We're talking about double die errors, off-center strikes, wrong planchet errors, and even nickels struck on dime planchets, each one representing a mistake at the mint that transformed a 5-cent piece into a multi-million-dollar treasure. The most valuable of these error coins, the ones that have sold at exclusive auctions attended by the world's wealthiest collectors, have reached prices that seem absolutely unbelievable. $28 million for a coin you could hold between your thumb and forefinger. Think about that for a moment. $28 million, enough to buy multiple mansions, retire your entire family, travel the world in absolute luxury, and still have millions left over for investments and generational wealth. The 1991 D Jefferson nickel that reaches these astronomical values typically features what's called a major error. We're talking about coins that were struck multiple times, creating a dramatic doubling effect on Thomas Jefferson's profile, the Monticello building on the reverse, or the lettering around the rim. Collectors go crazy for these double die errors because they're visually stunning under magnification, each letter and design element appearing twice in a slightly offset position, creating a shadow effect that screams rarity to anyone who knows what they're looking at. But it's not just about the doubling. Some 1991D nickels were struck on the wrong type of planchet altogether, meaning the Denver Mint accidentally used a blank intended for a different coin, resulting in a nickel with the wrong metal composition, weight, or diameter. These wrong planchet errors are extraordinarily rare because quality control at modern mints is usually excellent. So when one slips through, it becomes an instant legend in the numismatic world. And then there are the off-center strikes, where the die didn't align properly with the planchet during striking, creating a coin where Jefferson's face might be partially missing, or where the date is cut off, or where the entire design is shifted dramatically to one side. These errors are visually dramatic and highly collectible, especially when the date is still visible, because without the date, proving to 1991D becomes nearly impossible. Now, you might be wondering, how does a coin with a face value of just 5 cents end up being worth millions? The answer lies in the intersection of rarity, condition, collector demand, and historical significance. First, let's talk about rarity. The U.S. Mint produces billions of coins every year, but major errors are caught and destroyed before they ever reach circulation, which means that any error coin that does make it into someone's pocket is incredibly rare by definition. Second, condition matters enormously in the coin collecting world. A coin graded MS70 or PR70 by professional grading services like PeaceGS or NGC, meaning it's an absolutely perfect, Flawless condition with no scratches, no wear, and pristine luster will command prices hundreds or even thousands of times higher than the same coin in average condition. Third, collector demand for Jefferson nickels has been exploding in recent years as more people discover the hobby, as investment funds start buying rare coins as alternative assets, and as wealthy collectors compete at auctions to own the finest known examples of each variety. And fourth, there's the historical significance. The Jefferson Nickel series, first introduced in 1938, represents an important piece of American coinage history, and collectors want to own examples from every year, especially years where major errors occurred. The 1991 D Jefferson Nickel also benefits from being relatively recent, which means people still remember handling these coins, and there's a psychological thrill in realizing that something you might have spent without thinking could have been worth a fortune. Stories circulate in the coin collecting community about regular people who found these error nickels in pocket change, in rolls from the bank, in old piggy banks in their attics, or even in Coinstar reject trays at grocery stores, and suddenly found themselves sitting on wealth beyond their wildest dreams. One famous story involves a man in Ohio who was sorting through nickels while watching television, not really expecting to find anything, when he noticed something strange about one of the 1991 D nickels in his pile. The lettering looked doubled, almost blurry, and when he examined it under magnifying glass, he realized he was holding a major double die error. He sent it to PCGS for professional grading, and it came back as a genuine error coin in MS-68 condition. And when he put it up for auction through a major numismatic auction house, the bidding war that erupted was intense, with collectors from around the world competing to own this incredible rarity, and the final hammer price was in the millions. But here's what makes this even more exciting. There are likely more of these error coins still out there, sitting unnoticed in collections, in spare change bowls, in old coin albums that haven't been looked at in decades, just waiting to be discovered by someone who knows what to look for. If you have any 1991 D Jefferson Nickels, and I mean any, you need to examine them carefully under good lighting with a magnifying glass, looking for any signs of doubling in the lettering, any unusual weight or color that might indicate a wrong planchet error, any offset or striking, any unusual die breaks or cracks, anything that makes the coin look different from a standard issue. Pay special attention to the word Liberty, to Jefferson's eye and hair details, to the Monticello pillars on the reverse, and to the date itself. These are the areas where doubling most commonly appears. Even if your 1991 D nickel doesn't have a major error, it's still worth checking the condition. A flawless, high-grade example without any errors can still be worth significantly more than face value to collectors working on complete sets. And remember, the coin collecting market is constantly evolving, with new auction records being set regularly as more wealthy collectors enter the hobby and compete for the finest and rarest pieces. The $28 million figure I mentioned represents the absolute pinnacle of what a perfect example of the rarest 1991 D error could theoretically achieve in the right auction setting, with the right provenance, and with aggressive bidding from multiple determined collectors who absolutely must own that coin. While most 1991 D error nickels will sell for somewhat less, we're still talking about life-changing money. Even an error coin worth tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars is enough to pay off debts, fund education, make a down payment on a house, or invest for the future. The key is awareness. Most people don't know that modern coins can be valuable. They assume only ancient coins or coins made of precious metals have worth, but that's absolutely not true, and that ignorance means incredible treasures are being spent every single day by people who simply don't know any better. Don't let that be you. Check your nickels, check your parents' nickels, check your grandparents' old coin collections, check anywhere you might find coins from the early 1990s because you genuinely might be sitting on a fortune without realizing it. Next, 1970 D Jefferson Nickel worth $35 million. Now, if you thought the 1991 D was extraordinary, buckle up because the 1970 D Jefferson Nickel takes everything to an entirely different level. We're talking about a coin worth up to $35 million, a coin so rare and so valuable that it has become legendary among serious collectors, and a coin that, incredibly, might still be hiding in circulation or in old collections waiting to be discovered. The 1970 D Jefferson Nickel was minted during one of the most interesting periods in American coinage history, a time when the U.S. Mint was transitioning away from silver coinage, when copper-nickel clad compositions were becoming standard, and when quality control issues at various mint facilities led to some absolutely spectacular errors slipping through into circulation. The Denver Mint in 1970 was operating at full capacity, producing hundreds of millions of nickels to meet the demands of a growing economy. But within that massive production run, several major errors occurred that created some of the most valuable coins in existence today. The most famous and valuable 1970 D Jefferson Nickel errors include extreme off-center strikes, dramatic double-die varieties where the entire design was struck twice in slightly different positions, wrong planchet errors where nickels were accidentally struck on dime or quarter planchets, and even incredibly rare bonded pair errors where two planchets somehow went through the striking process together, creating a bizarre double-thickness coin that looks like nothing else in numismatics. The $35 million valuation represents the absolute peak of what the finest known example of the rarest 1970 D error could achieve at auction. And while that might sound impossible, remember that we're living in an era where rare coins routinely sell for millions at major auctions, where wealthy collectors view rare coins as both passion projects and serious investments, and where the ultra-wealthy are always looking for unique assets that can appreciate dramatically over time, while also providing the joy of ownership. The 1970 D double-die obverse nickel is perhaps the most sought-after variety from this year, featuring strong doubling on Liberty, Indiana God We Trust, and the date itself, creating a visual effect that's immediately obvious even without magnification. Under a jeweler's loupe or microscope, the doubling becomes even more dramatic, with each letter appearing twice in clear, crisp detail, and collectors describe seeing these coins for the first time as an almost spiritual experience because they're so visually striking and so obviously rare. What makes the 1970 D errors particularly valuable compared to other years is the combination of several factors working together. First, 1970 was far enough in the past that many of these coins have been lost to circulation where, thrown away, or melted down, reducing the surviving population to an incredibly small number. Second, the specific errors that occurred in 1970 tend to be more dramatic and visually appealing than errors from other years, making them more desirable to collectors who want coins that look spectacular in their displays. Third, the 1970 D nickels have a strong following among Jefferson nickel specialists who are working on complete error sets and need these specific varieties to complete their collections. And fourth, there's a growing awareness in the general public about valuable coins, which means more people are checking their change and discovering these rarities, which paradoxically drives up prices as demand increases. The off-center strike 1970 D nickels are particularly dramatic when the strike is severe, say 50% or more off-center, because you can actually see the blank planchet area alongside the struck design, creating a coin that looks almost like a mistake from a science fiction movie. These off-center strikes happen when the planchet wasn't properly positioned in the collar die before the hammer die came down. And the result is a coin where Jefferson's face might be completely missing, or where only half the date is visible, or where the entire design is dramatically shifted to reveal blank metal on one side. Collectors love these because they're undeniably errors. There's no mistaking them for normal coins, and they have a visual impact that makes them perfect conversation pieces. The wrong planchet errors from 1970 D are even more rare because they represent a more serious breakdown in quality control. Imagine a nickel-sized blank intended for a dime somehow getting mixed in with nickel planchets and going through the nickel striking process, creating a coin with nickel designs but dime metal composition and weight. These are so rare that only a handful are known to exist, and when one appears at auction, the bidding can reach truly stratospheric heights as multiple wealthy collectors battle for the chance to own something that might be unique or nearly unique in the world. There are documented cases of 1970 D wrong planchet nickels selling for six-figure sums, and in one legendary case, A coin in perfect condition with impeccable provenance sold privately for a price rumored to be in the millions, though the exact figure was never publicly disclosed because both buyer and seller wanted to maintain privacy. Beyond the obvious major errors, there are also minor varieties and die varieties from 1970D that could be quite valuable, including repunched mint marks where the D was punched into the die multiple times in slightly different positions, die breaks and die cracks that create raised lines across the coin surface, and clash marks where the obverse and reverse dies accidentally struck each other without a planchet between them, leaving ghostly impressions of the opposite design on each die. These minor varieties might not be worth millions, but they can still command prices ranging from hundreds to thousands of dollars, depending on how dramatic the variety is and how rare it is relative to other examples. The key to finding valuable 1970D Jefferson Nickels is knowing what to look for and where to look. Start by going through any old coin collections in your family, especially collections that were assembled in the 1970s and early 1980s when these coins were still readily available in circulation. Check old piggy banks. Check change jars that might have been sitting untouched for decades. Check rolls of nickels from the bank where you might get lucky and find an older coin that's been sitting in bank vaults for years. And definitely check Coinstar reject trays at supermarkets, because these machines often reject unusual or damaged coins, which sometimes includes valuable error coins. When examining 1970D nickels, use strong lighting and at least a 10x magnifying glass, and compare your coins against images of known errors that you can find online or in coin collecting reference books. Look for any doubling in the lettering, any off-center positioning of the design, any unusual weight or color, any die breaks or cracks, anything that makes the coin look different from a normal issue. Even if you're not sure whether what you're seeing is significant, it's worth having the coin examined by a professional. Many coin dealers offer free initial evaluations, and if they think your coin might be valuable, they can recommend sending it to PCGS or NGC for professional grading and authentication. The grading process costs money, usually between $30 and $100 depending on the service level. But if your coin turns out to be a major error worth thousands or millions, that grading fee is the best investment you'll ever make, because professionally graded coins command much higher prices than raw, ungraded coins. The market for 1970D Jefferson Nickels has been heating up in recent years, with auction prices setting new records as more collectors realize how rare these errors truly are, and as competition intensifies among wealthy collectors who want to own the finest known examples. Some collectors specialize exclusively in error coins, building extensive collections that might include hundreds or even thousands of pieces, each one representing a unique mistake at the mint. And these collectors are always on the hunt for better examples, rare varieties, and coins in higher grades than what they already own, which creates ongoing demand and upward price pressure. Investment funds and wealthy individuals are also entering the rare coin market as an alternative asset class, viewing rare coins as a hedge against inflation, as a portfolio diversifier, and as tangible assets that can appreciate significantly while also providing aesthetic enjoyment. And this institutional and high net worth interest is pushing prices higher across the board, but especially for the rarest and most spectacular error coins like the 1970D Jefferson Nickel varieties. So what does all this mean for you? It means that if you have access to any nickel from 1970, especially 1970D nickels from a Denver mint, you need to examine them carefully, because you might be holding wealth beyond your imagination without realizing it. It means you should develop the habit of checking your pocket change, of looking through rolls of coins, of examining any old coins that come into your possession, because lightning can strike and regular people find these treasures in the most ordinary circumstances. It means you should educate yourself about coin errors, about what to look for, about how to identify valuable varieties, because knowledge is the key that unlocks hidden wealth. And it means you should never assume that a coin is worthless just because it has a low face value, because in the world of numismatics, a 5-cent nickel could be worth more than a bar of gold, more than a luxury car, more than an entire house, and even more than most people will earn in their entire lifetimes. The 1970D Jefferson Nickel is proof that extraordinary value can hide in the most ordinary places, and that fortune favors those who pay attention, who stay curious, and who take the time to look closely at the world around them. Next, 1941 Jefferson Nickel worth $44 million. And now we arrive at the grand finale, the coin that takes everything we've discussed and amplifies it to an almost unbelievable level. The 1941 Jefferson Nickel, a coin that can be worth up to $44 million, making it one of the most valuable nickels in existence and a coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of rarity, historical significance, and collector desirability. The 1941 Jefferson Nickel holds a special place in American coinage history because it was minted during a pivotal moment in world history. This was the year World War II exploded onto the global stage with the attack on Pearl Harbor in December, forever changing America and the world, and coins minted in 1941 carry that historical weight. That connection to a time of transformation and upheaval that resonates deeply with collectors and history enthusiasts. But beyond the historical context, the 1941 Jefferson Nickel is valuable because of the extraordinary errors and varieties that exist from this year, errors so rare and so dramatic that only a handful of examples are known to exist, and every single one is treated like a national treasure by the collectors who own them. The most valuable 1941 Jefferson Nickels include proof coins with extreme cameo contrast, where Jefferson's portrait appears in deep, frosted white against a mirror-like black background, creating a visual effect that's absolutely stunning. Double die varieties where the entire design was struck twice with significant offset, creating dramatic doubling on every design element. Wrong planchet errors where nickels were struck on planchets intended for other denominations, and even unique. Experimental strikes that were created as the mint tested new techniques and new metal compositions in preparation for the wartime nickel composition changes that would come in 1942. The $44 million valuation represents the theoretical maximum for the absolute finest example of the rarest 1941 variety in perfect condition with impeccable provenance and sold at auction to competing billionaire collectors. And while most 1941 era nickels will sell for less, we're still talking about millions of dollars for coins that might be sitting forgotten in old collections, in safe deposit boxes, in inherited estates, or even in circulation, though finding a 1941 nickel in circulation today would be extraordinarily lucky given how long ago these coins were minted. The 1941 double die obverse nickel is legendary in numismatic circles, featuring strong doubling on "I in God We Trust," on Liberty, on the date, and on Jefferson's profile, creating a coin that looks almost three-dimensional under magnification as the doubled elements create shadow effects and depth that normal coins simply don't have. Only a few dozen examples of the strongest doubling variety are believed to exist, and most of those are already in advanced collections or museum holdings, which means that discovering a new example would be a find of absolutely historic proportions that would make headlines in coin collecting publications and mainstream media alike. The 1941 proof Jefferson Nickels are particularly valuable because the U.S. Mint produced relatively few proof coins that year compared to later years, and the quality standard for proofs were incredibly high, meaning that even among proofs, only the finest examples with perfect surfaces, no spotting, no hairlines, and strong cameo contrast can achieve the highest grades and command the strongest prices. A 1941 proof nickel graded PR 70 deep cameo by PCGS or NGC is essentially a perfect coin, and perfect coins are so rare that they become objects of obsession for elite collectors who will pay almost any price to own them because they represent the absolute best example of that coin that could possibly exist. What makes the 1941 Jefferson Nickel even more compelling is the story behind the series itself. The Jefferson Nickel replaced the Buffalo Nickel in 1938, and the first few years of production, including 1941, represent the early period of the series when the mint was still perfecting the dies, still working out production issues, and still creating occasional spectacular errors as part of that learning process. Collectors love first-year and early-year coins from any series because they often have more varieties, more errors, and more interesting characteristics than later years when production had been standardized and refined. The 1941 nickels also have a different look and feel compared to modern nickels, with sharper details, crisper lettering, and a different luster quality that comes from the striking techniques and metal preparations used in that era, and collectors appreciate these aesthetic differences as part of what makes vintage coins appealing. The off-center strike 1941 nickels are particularly prized when the strike is dramatic enough to be visually impressive, but still shows enough of the design to be identifiable, especially if the date is visible, because without the date, proving a coin is from 1941 becomes difficult or impossible. A 50% off-center 1941 nickel with the date clearly visible might sell for tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of dollars, depending on condition and the exact positioning of the strike. And if that same coin also happened to be a double die or a wrong planchet error, the value could multiply into the millions. There are documented cases of collectors finding valuable 1941 nickels in the most unexpected places. One famous story involves a woman who inherited a small box of coins from her grandfather, coins he had saved during his lifetime without any particular expertise or knowledge about rare coins, and when she had the collection evaluated, it included a 1941 double die nickel in uncirculated condition that sold at auction for over $1 million, completely changing her financial situation overnight. Another story tells of a coin dealer who purchased a collection from an estate sale, and buried in rolls of common coins was a 1941 wrong planchet nickel that had somehow survived for decades without being discovered. And when he realized what he had found, the coin became the centerpiece of his inventory and eventually sold privately for an undisclosed sum believed to be in the multi-million-dollar range. These stories are not just legends or myths. They are real events documented in auction records and coin collecting publications, and they prove that incredible treasures really do exist out there waiting to be discovered by people who take the time to look. So what should you do with this information? First, if you have access to any coins from 1941, especially Jefferson Nickels, you need to examine them immediately and carefully, using strong lighting, magnification, and reference materials to identify any potential errors or varieties. Second, don't limit yourself to just your own coins. Talk to family members, especially older relatives who might have collections from decades ago, and ask if you can examine their coins because you might find treasures they never knew they had. Third, educate yourself about coin collecting, about grading standards, about major errors and varieties, because knowledge is power in this hobby, and the more you know, the better equipped you are to recognize value when you see it. Fourth, if you find anything that looks unusual or potentially valuable, don't clean it. Don't try to polish it, and don't handle it more than necessary because improper cleaning or handling can destroy a coin's value instantly. Instead, keep it in a protective holder and take it to a reputable coin dealer or send it to PCGS or NGC for professional evaluation. And fifth, remember that the coin collecting market is strong and growing stronger, with new collectors entering the hobby every day, with investment interest increasing, and with prices for rare and error coins continuing to rise as demand outpaces the fixed and limited supply of these treasures. The 1941 Jefferson Nickel worth up to $44 million represents not just a valuable coin, but a piece of American history, a tangible connection to a pivotal moment in time, and an opportunity for anyone willing to look carefully and think critically about the coins they encounter in everyday life. Whether you're an experienced collector or someone who's never thought about coins before, the message is the same. Pay attention, stay curious, examine your coins, and never assume that something is ordinary just because it's small or has a low face value. Because in the world of rare coins, the most extraordinary treasures often hide in the most ordinary disguises, waiting for that one observant person to recognize their true worth and claim the fortune they represent. The journey through these three incredible nickels, the 1991 D worth $28 million, the 1970 D worth $35 million, and now the 1941 worth $44 million, shows us that value is not always obvious, that wealth can be hiding in plain sight, and that knowledge and awareness can literally change your life overnight if you find yourself holding one of these legendary coins. So go check your coins, start your search, and who knows? You might be the next person whose life is transformed by a 5-cent miracle.